The knife was out before Rosalie even saw his hand move. Not pointed at her, pointed at the waiter who'd gotten too close to their table. Jeffrey Heidel's voice was silk over steel. "Give us a moment." The lady in rags across from the man in the tailored suit. That's what the headlines would say tomorrow. What they wouldn't say. She dressed this way to scare him off. What they couldn't know. It made him want her more. Rosalie Kenny knew 3 things the moment she walked into Marcello's. 1. She was underdressed for this restaurant by about 2 tax brackets. 2. The man at table 7 was staring at her, like she'd just proven every theory he'd ever had about the world. And 3. She'd made a terrible, irreversible mistake, agreeing to this blind date. The rose in his hand was the color of blood. The restaurant smelled of expensive wine and old money leather booths, dim Edison bulbs, the kind of place where you needed a reservation 3 weeks in advance, and a credit card that didn't get declined. Rosalie stood in the doorway wearing a ripped cream sweater that had a hole near the left shoulder, jeans that had faded to nearly white at the knees, and sneakers she'd bought at a discount store 2 years ago. Her hair hung loose and unstyled. Still damp from the shower she'd barely had time for between her shift at the diner and her night classes. No makeup. Definitely no jewelry. She'd chosen this outfit deliberately. Her cousin Amber had set up this blind date, begging and pleading and finally guilt-tripping Rosalie into agreeing. After a year of living in hiding, 2 jobs, 0 social life, and an apartment with locks, she checked 3 times before sleeping. Rosalie had developed a survival strategy. Make yourself invisible. Make yourself uninteresting. Make yourself forgettable. If a man couldn't handle her at her most exhausted and unpolished, then he wasn't someone she needed to waste time on anyway. Mostly, she just wanted to survive the next hour without having to explain herself, without having to lie, without anyone asking questions she couldn't answer. The man at table 7 didn't look away. Rosalie had expected someone ordinary. Amber's usual type, a friend of a friend, someone nice, someone stable, probably wearing khakis and a polo shirt, someone who'd take one look at her ratty clothes, make an excuse about an early morning, and leave her to finish a free appetizer in peace. Instead, the man rising from the booth looked like he'd stepped out of a different world entirely. He wore a black suit tailored so precisely it might as well have been painted on Italian. Expensive, the kind that didn't wrinkle. His dark hair was swept back, revealing a sharp jawline and eyes that caught the candlelight like polished obsidian. There was something about the way he moved, controlled, purposeful, like a predator who'd never once questioned his dominance, that made every instinct in Rosalie's body scream danger. And yet he was walking toward her. Their eyes met. He smiled just barely, one corner of his mouth lifting, and Rosalie's breath caught in her throat. Rosalie. Her name in his voice sounded like a vow, like a promise, like something he'd been waiting to say. "I'm Jeffrey Heidel. Amber said you'd be the one trying to hide in plain sight." Rosalie's mouth went dry. This couldn't be right. Amber had described her blind date as a friend from the gym who was recently single and could use some company. This man looked like he'd never needed company in his life, like people orbited him whether he wanted them to or not. She glanced down at her torn sweater, at the scuffed toes of her sneakers, and wanted to sink through the marble floor. "That's me," she managed, not moving from her spot near the entrance. "Listen, you can leave if you need to. I mean, I get it. Amber probably didn't mention I'd look like I just survived a natural disaster." Jeffrey's smile widened, revealing something almost wolfish. "Why would I leave when I just found exactly what I've been looking for?" He gestured to the booth, and despite every alarm bell ringing in her head, Rosalie found herself walking toward it. The rose sat between them on the white tablecloth, impossibly red, impossibly perfect. Jeffrey didn't sit until she did, and when he finally slid into the booth across from her, his movements were unhurried, confident, like he'd never once been nervous about anything. "I have to say," he continued, his eyes never leaving hers, "Amber told me you were genuine. She didn't mention you were fearless." Rosalie blinked. "Are you sure you have the right person?" "Rosalie Kenny. Works at Sinclair's diner during the day. Takes classes at Harbor Community College at night. Has a cousin who talks way too much." Rosalie Kenny. Moved to the city a year ago. Keeps to herself. Doesn't trust easily. And according to Amber, makes the best scrambled eggs on the eastern seaboard. Jeffrey leaned back, completely at ease despite her visible discomfort. "That's what I was told. The eggs intrigued me most, if I'm being honest." Despite herself, despite the way her heart was hammering against her ribs, Rosalie felt a small, traitorous smile pulling at her lips. Amber has a big mouth. Amber is perceptive. And loyal. Jeffrey's expression softened slightly. She's been working security at one of my properties for 6 months. I've learned to trust her judgment about people. Your property? Rosalie's stomach dropped. Of course, this was some kind of setup, probably. Amber's misguided attempt to help her pathetic, isolated cousin by introducing her to her wealthy boss. A pity date. I own several businesses in Harbor City. He waved his hand dismissively, like empires were nothing. Very boring things, logistics, real estate, private security. I'd much rather hear about your classes. Amber mentioned you're studying early childhood education. That takes a special kind of strength. A server appeared at their table, and Jeffrey ordered something in Italian that Rosalie didn't catch, then turned to her with a raised eyebrow. She asked for water, just water, and immediately regretted it. Why couldn't she have ordered something that made her sound less like a charity case? So, Jeffrey said once the server left, his dark eyes fixed on hers with an intensity that made her want to look away. I should confess something. Here it comes, Rosalie thought. The polite exit. The, you seem nice, but speech. I told Amber not to describe me to you. I asked her to keep it vague, just give you a time and place. He reached up, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair in a gesture that looked almost vulnerable. I've had some experiences with people who were more interested in what I could provide than who I actually am. It gets exhausting, pretending you don't notice when someone's eyes light up at your last name instead of something you've said. Rosalie studied him carefully. There was something raw in his expression, something that didn't match the expensive suit or the commanding presence. Something real. I wore these clothes on purpose, she admitted quietly. I didn't want to impress anyone. I just wanted to. She stopped, not sure how to finish that sentence without revealing too much. Survive, Jeffrey finished for her, and the understanding in his voice was so unexpected, so genuine, that Rosalie felt something crack open in her chest. Yeah, she whispered. Survive. He leaned forward, candlelight catching on something metallic at his collar, a tattoo, barely visible above the crisp white shirt. When he spoke again, his voice was lower, rougher, like he was telling her a secret meant only for her. What if I told you I didn't want you to impress me either? His eyes held hers, dark and unflinching. What if I said the last thing I need is another performance, another perfectly rehearsed version of someone pretending to be something they're not? Then why are you here? Rosalie asked, and she hated how her voice shook. Jeffrey reached across the table, his fingers hovering just above hers, close enough to feel the heat of his skin, but not quite touching. Because Amber told me you were real, and I haven't seen anything real in a very long time. The restaurant seemed to fall away, the murmured conversations, the clinking silverware, the soft jazz playing from hidden speakers. There was only Jeffrey's steady gaze, the rows between them, and the terrifying realization that this man saw her, actually saw her. Not the rags, not the exhaustion, not the fear she carried like a second skin. He saw her, and that, Rosalie would later realize, was the most dangerous thing of all. Rosalie didn't know that the man sitting across from her, studying her with those dark, hungry eyes, was Jeffrey Heidel, the Jeffrey Heidel, the Wolf of Harbor City, the man whose name made hardened criminals cross the street. She didn't know that in 48 hours, her face would be on every gossip site in the city, that his enemies would start circling, that his family would tear her apart at a dinner table she'd never asked to sit at. All she knew was that for the first time in a year, she felt like she could breathe. She should have run. If you're already feeling that pull, that dangerous, intoxicating pull between Rosalie and Jeffrey, then you're exactly where you need to be. Before we continue, make sure you're subscribed, hit that like button, and tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing our little dark romance family stretch across cities, countries, and time zones. Honestly, if you don't subscribe now, you'll regret it when the next chapter drops and you're scrambling to find us again. Every click, every comment, every bit of love you leave here helps us keep unraveling these dangerous love stories and high-stakes betrayals together. You're part of this now. So find your quiet place, dim the lights, and stay with me. Let's begin. 2 hours later, Jeffrey walked Rosalie to the restaurant entrance, his hand hovering near the small of her back without quite touching. The October air bit through her thin sweater, and she wrapped her arms around herself. Let me take you home, Jeffrey said. Not a question, a statement of fact, like he'd already decided. I'm fine. I'll just... Rosalie pulled out her phone, fingers trembling slightly as she opened the Lyft app. I've got it covered. She didn't see the way Jeffrey's eyes tracked the fading bruise on her wrist when her sleeve rode up, or how his jaw tightened at the small flinch she couldn't quite hide when a car backfired down the street. but he noticed. He noticed everything. Rosalie, really, I'm okay. She smiled, and it almost reached her eyes. Thank you for dinner. It was unexpected. The lift pulled up a silver Honda, license plate memorized in the 3 seconds before Rosalie climbed inside. Jeffrey watched the car disappear into Harbor City traffic, his hands buried in his pockets, that strange tightness in his chest, refusing to ease. He couldn't remember the last time he'd cared where someone went, who they went home to, whether they made it safely through the night. 3 years ago, Jeffrey had learned what trust cost. Her name was Victoria, and she'd played her part perfectly, the devoted girlfriend, the woman who asked no questions about his work, who smiled at his men and attended family dinners with grace. For 8 months, she'd recorded every conversation, photographed every document, built a case that nearly brought his entire organization down. The betrayal hadn't just shattered his trust, it had calcified something inside him, turned him into the wolf everyone already believed he was. He'd sworn off relationships entirely, sworn off anyone who could get close enough to hurt him. But Rosalie wasn't Victoria. She wasn't polished or calculating. She wasn't performing. When she'd admitted she wore those clothes to survive, something in Jeffrey had recognized the truth of it, the same brutal, necessary truth he lived by every day. She was real in a world built on lies, and that terrified him more than any rival ever had. The next morning, Rosalie opened her apartment door to find a single red rose on the worn doormat. No vase, no elaborate arrangement, just one perfect flower and a small card in dark, precise handwriting. I'd like to see you again, Jay. Her hands shook as she picked it up, glancing down the empty hallway. No one there, no one watching, but someone had found her address. Someone knew where she lived. Rosalie's heart hammered against her ribs as she stumbled back inside, triple locking the door with fingers that couldn't quite stay steady. The rose fell from her grip, landing on the scarred linoleum. He found you, her mind whispered. He always said he'd find you. She didn't let herself think about which he she meant. The photographer was waiting outside Sinclair's diner when Rosalie arrived for her morning shift. She didn't notice him at first, just another person with a camera, maybe a tourist. But then the shutter clicked as she reached for the door handle, and clicked again when she turned around, and suddenly there were 3 more across the street, lenses trained on her like weapons. Rosalie, is it true you're dating Jeffrey Heidel? How long have you been together? What's it like being with the Wolf of Harbor City? She stumbled inside, heart racing, as her manager Frank stared through the window with obvious concern. Rose, what the hell? Her phone buzzed. Then again. And again. 23 notifications. All news alerts. All with her face captured outside Marcello's 2 nights ago. The headlines were worse than the photos. Mafia boss's mystery woman. Who is Jeffrey Heidel's new companion? From rags to riches? Unknown woman spotted with Harbor City's most dangerous bachelor. Gold digger or true love? Inside Heidel's shocking romance. By lunch, there were 2 black SUVs parked across from the diner that hadn't been there before. Men in dark glasses watching. Not paparazzi, something colder. Something that made Rosalie's instincts scream run. She lasted until her shift ended before she called the only number that made sense. You bastard. Rosalie's voice shook with fury when Jeffrey answered. You destroyed my life. Do you understand that? I've spent a year being invisible. And you, where are you? His voice was sharp, controlled. The diner, where there are cameras and strangers and... Her breath hitched. Why would you do this? Stay inside. I'm 10 minutes away. Don't you dare come here. The line went dead. Jeffrey arrived in 8 minutes, walking through the diner doors like he owned them. Rosalie met him outside in the alley, fury and fear warring in her chest. I didn't leak anything, he said before she could start yelling again. His eyes scanned the street professional, calculating. Someone saw us. Someone always sees. But now that they have... Now what? Rosalie demanded. Now I'm a target? Now your enemies think I'm some toy you picked up? Now you're not safe. The words came out quiet, almost gentle. Let me protect you. I have properties, secure locations. No, Rosalie stepped back. I don't need your protection. I don't need anything from you. Rosalie, I survived this long on my own. I'll keep surviving. She walked back inside, leaving Jeffrey in the alley with shadows closing in around them both. Across the street, a man in a dark sedan lifted his phone and made a call. The wolf's new weakness had a name. The Heidel estate looked like something from a gothic novel. all stone and iron gates and windows that watched like eyes. Rosalie's borrowed black dress felt like a costume, the heels pinching her feet with every step across the marble foyer. "This is a mistake," she whispered to Jeffrey. "They need to see you're not going anywhere." His hand found hers, warm and steady. "Trust me." The dining room was worse than she'd imagined. Crystal chandeliers, oil paintings of dead relatives, and a table long enough to seat 20. Only 5 chairs were occupied, but the people in them radiated enough cold power to fill the entire space. Jeffrey's mother sat at the head, silver hair pulled back severely, diamonds at her throat, eyes like chips of ice. His brother Marcus stood by the window, arms crossed, looking like a darker, harder version of Jeffrey. And the underboss, a man introduced only as Vincent, watched Rosalie like she was a problem requiring elimination. "So," Jeffrey's mother said, not bothering with pleasantries, "this is her. Mother, this is Rosalie Kenny." Jeffrey pulled out a chair for her. "Rosalie, my mother Catherine, my brother Marcus and Vincent." Catherine's gaze traveled over Rosalie's dress borrowed from Amber, obviously not expensive enough. "She looks homeless. Jeffrey, where exactly did you find this girl? A shelter?" "Outside a diner, actually," Marcus added, swirling his wine. "I saw the photos. Very authentic." "She's a liability," Vincent said flatly. "Someone with no background, no connections, no security clearance. You're making us vulnerable." Rosalie's hands clenched in her lap. She'd known this would be bad, but the casual cruelty in their voices, like she wasn't even human enough to be hurt by it, made something inside her crack. "You want to know where he found me?" Her voice came out stronger than she felt. "I was working 2 jobs because my ex stole my identity. He forged documents, drained my bank accounts, left me with warrants I didn't even know existed. I've spent a year hiding because I had nothing, no money, no family, nowhere to go. So yes, I look homeless, because I was homeless." The room went silent. "I never asked for any of this," Rosalie continued, voice shaking now. "I never asked for your son's attention, or these cameras, or—" Jeffrey's fist slammed into the table with enough force to rattle the crystal. "Enough." Everyone froze. "You want to question my judgment?" His voice was deadly quiet, the kind of calm that preceded violence. "Question my choices? Fine. But understand this, Rosalie is my choice. Mine. And if any of you have a problem with that, we can discuss it outside this room. Permanently." Catherine's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Fear, maybe. Or respect. Rosalie stared at Jeffrey, at the man who'd just threatened his own family for her, and felt terror bloom in her chest. He would burn his kingdom down. And somehow, that was more frightening than anything else. Marcus dropped the manila folder on Jeffrey's desk 3 days after the disastrous family dinner. "You're not going to like this," his brother said, lighting a cigarette by the window. "But you needed to know." Jeffrey didn't look up from his laptop. "If you hired someone to dig into Rosalie—" "Of course I did. You threatened Mother over a girl you've known for a week." Marcus exhaled, smoke into the cold morning air. "Read it. Then thank me." The folder sat between them like a loaded gun. Jeffrey opened it. Subject: Rosalie Marie Kenny, age 26. Previous address: Atlanta, Georgia. Current status: living under partial alias. Employment under maiden name. Criminal record: 3 outstanding warrants. Georgia: identity fraud, check forgery, credit card theft. Reality: all crimes committed by former domestic partner, Derek Mitchell. Subject was unaware until fleeing relationship 14 months ago. The photos were worse than the text. Bank statements showing systematic draining of joint accounts, forged signatures on loan applications, court documents with Rosalie's name on charges she'd never been arrested for, and then the hospital records. Emergency room visit, September 2023. Fractured wrist, bruised ribs, defensive wounds on forearms. Patient declined police report. Jeffrey's hands shook as he turned the page. Subject has been living in Harbor City for 13 months, working multiple jobs under the table to avoid detection. No criminal intent verified. Assessment: victim of severe domestic abuse and financial exploitation. "Still think she's after your money?" Marcus asked quietly. Jeffrey couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. This woman who'd sat across from his family and endured their cruelty, who defended herself with nothing but raw honesty, had been surviving hell alone. He found her outside Harbor Community College, books clutched to her chest, hair pulled back in that same messy way. She looked exhausted, beautiful, breakable. "Rosalie." She turned, and the moment she saw him, something in her expression shuddered. "What are you doing here?" I need to talk to you about the investigation." Her voice went cold. "You think I wouldn't find out? Your brother's PI wasn't exactly subtle, Jeffrey. Asking questions at my old workplace, pulling my medical records. I didn't authorize that, but you read it, didn't you?" Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "You read every humiliating detail of my life, every mistake, every scar, every reason I'm not good enough for your world. Rosalie, that's not... I trusted you." The words came out broken. "I told you things I've never told anyone. And you had me investigated like I was some kind of criminal. I'm trying to help. I don't need your help." She was backing away now, books pressed against her chest like armor. "I don't need you digging through my past, exposing everything I've been running from. Stay away from me, Jeffrey. Just stay away." She disappeared into the crowd of students, leaving Jeffrey standing alone with the truth neither of them knew how to carry. Jeffrey found her apartment that night, not through surveillance or threats, just the address from the Lyft pickup he'd memorized. He knocked softly, aware of how this looked. A man like him, at her door, in the dark. Rosalie opened it with the chain still attached. "Go away. I can fix this." The words tumbled out urgent, desperate. "The warrants, I have people who can make them disappear. Your ex, Derek Mitchell, I can find him. I can make him pay for everything he did to you. Your debt, your record, all of it. Stop." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Rosalie, please, let me help." "Help?" She laughed, and it sounded like breaking glass. "You want to help by doing what exactly? Having him killed? Beaten? Making evidence disappear like it never happened? He deserves... I don't care what he deserves." The chain rattled as she pressed against the door. "Don't you understand? I spent a year running from a man who controlled everything, my money, my choices, my life. I told myself if I ever got free, I'd never let anyone have that power over me again. Anyone. It's not the same. Isn't it?" Tears streaked her face now. "You want to solve my problems with crime, with violence, with the same kind of power that men like Derek use to destroy women like me. How is that different, Jeffrey?" "How?" "Because I love you." The words came out raw, unplanned. Rosalie closed her eyes. "That makes it worse. Don't you see? I won't trade one dangerous man for another. I won't let you fix me, save me, or remake my life into something you can control. Even if you're doing it out of love." "Rosalie." "Goodbye, Jeffrey." The door closed. The locks turned, and Jeffrey stood in the hallway of a building that smelled like mildew and broken dreams, feeling something inside him shatter. 3 weeks passed. Rosalie stopped going to the diner, changed her class schedule, blocked his number, disappeared into the city like she'd never existed at all. Jeffrey threw himself into work deals that needed his attention, rivals that needed handling, an empire that demanded its king. His men whispered that the boss was colder now, more ruthless, that something in him had died. They weren't wrong. At night, alone in his estate, Jeffrey stared at the single photograph he'd kept Rosalie in that ripped sweater, exhausted, and real, and more beautiful than anything he'd ever wanted. He'd offered her everything. She'd chosen nothing instead. And somehow, that made him love her more. Miles away, in a studio apartment with triple locks, Rosalie pressed her face into a pillow that still smelled faintly of expensive cologne, and cried until there was nothing left. I know you're feeling it too, that ache, that desperate need for them to find their way back. But before we get there, I need you to do something. Subscribe. Right now, hit that like button. Comment below and tell me, have you ever walked away from someone you loved because you were too scared to stay? Because that's what Rosalie just did. And if you don't subscribe, you're walking away from this story and you'll never know if she comes back. Every click, every comment, every bit of love you leave here helps us keep unraveling these dangerous love stories and high-stakes betrayals together. You're part of this family now, so don't disappear on me. Find your quiet place, stay close, and let's see if broken people can ever really be whole. Let's continue. Marcus found Rosalie outside the community college on a Thursday afternoon, hands in his expensive coat pockets, looking uncomfortable in a way men like him rarely did. "I owe you an apology," he said without preamble. Rosalie nearly dropped her coffee. "What?" "The investigation. My brother didn't know about it until I showed him the results." Marcus pulled out a folder official letterhead, private investigator seal. "I hired them behind his back. I thought you were a threat. I was wrong." He handed her the documents, and Rosalie saw the dates. The investigation had been opened 2 days after the family dinner, concluded the day before Jeffrey showed up at her school. He nearly killed me when he found out, Marcus continued quietly, not figuratively. He put me through a wall, said I'd violated you, exposed you, destroyed any chance he had. He met her eyes. My brother has done terrible things, Miss Kenny, but everything he tried to do for you, that was love. Clumsy, desperate, probably wrong, but love nonetheless. Rosalie's hands trembled around the folder. Why are you telling me this? Because he's dying without you, slowly, and I've never seen Jeffrey Heidel break before. Marcus turned to leave, then paused. He didn't want to control you. He just didn't know how to love someone without trying to protect them from everything, including themselves. That night, Amber showed up at Rosalie's apartment with takeout and zero patience. You're an idiot, her cousin announced, shoving past her into the cramped studio. Excuse me? You left the one man who would burn the world down to keep you safe. Amber threw the food on the counter. Do you know what Jeffrey did after you walked away? He hired lawyers, real lawyers, not criminals, to fight your warrants legally. He's building a case to clear your name without using his connections, without making anything disappear. It's going to take months, maybe years, but he's doing it your way. Rosalie sank onto the couch. What? He respected your choice, even though it's killing him. Amber's voice softened. Rose, I've worked security for powerful men. I know the difference between control and devotion. Jeffrey loves you, the real kind, the kind that lets you walk away even when it destroys him. After Amber left, Rosalie sat alone with the PI report spread across her floor. Every page was a violation, yes, but also proof that Jeffrey had seen her worst moments and loved her anyway, that he'd tried to help the only way he knew how, then stepped back when she demanded it. She'd called him dangerous, but Derek had been dangerous. Derek had taken and destroyed and left nothing behind. Jeffrey had offered everything and asked for nothing but her. At 2 a.m., Rosalie made her decision. She wanted him. Not the empire, not the protection, not the power, just the man who looked at her in rags and saw something worth burning kingdoms for. That's the moment, isn't it? When you realize that fear of losing someone is worse than the fear of getting hurt. If you've felt that, if you've ever made that 2 a.m. decision, then you understand Rosalie, and you understand why this channel exists. Before we see what happens when she stands at those gates, subscribe, hit that like button, comment and tell me about your 2 a.m. decision, the person you went back to, or the one you wish you had. I love seeing our little dark romance family stretch across cities, countries, and time zones. Every click, every comment, every bit of love you leave here helps us keep unraveling these dangerous love stories and high-stakes betrayals together. You're not just watching, you're part of why these stories matter. So stay, find your quiet place, and let's watch Rosalie walk through those gates together. The gates of the Heidel estate loomed like the entrance to another world. Rosalie stood on the sidewalk, hands shaking, while 2 guards watched her from their post with obvious suspicion. I need to see Jeffrey, she called out. The younger guard reached for his radio. Ma'am, Mr. Heidel isn't taking visitors. It's her. The older one's voice was quiet. Let her through. The gates opened with a mechanical groan. The walk to the front door felt endless manicured lawns, fountain sculptures, windows that glowed like distant stars. Rosalie's worn sneakers felt obscene against the stone pathway. She'd almost turned back twice, but something pulled her forward, something that felt like gravity. She knocked. Footsteps inside, voices, then silence. The door opened, and Jeffrey stood there. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, shirt untucked, hair disheveled, shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there before. But when he saw her, something in his expression cracked open. Relief, pain, hope. Rosalie, can I come in? He stepped back wordlessly, and she walked into a foyer that probably cost more than every apartment she'd ever lived in combined. But she wasn't looking at the marble or the chandeliers. She was looking at him. I don't want a savior, she said before her courage could fail. I don't want someone to fix my life or erase my past or fight my battles for me. I've had enough of men who think love means control. Jeffrey's jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. I'm tired of running. From Derek, from my past, from anything good because I'm terrified it'll turn bad. Her voice shook. But I'm more tired of lying to myself about what I want. And what I want is you, not your empire, not your protection, just you, as a partner, as an equal, as someone who sees me and doesn't try to change what he sees. Rosalie, I need to know you won't cage me. that you won't use your power to control me, even if you think it's for my own good. I need to know that when I say no, you'll respect it, even when it hurts." Jeffrey crossed the space between them slowly, stopping just close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. "I vow to never cage you," he said, voice rough with emotion. "Never control you, never use fear or power or anything else against you. I'll respect every no, every boundary, every choice, even the ones that destroy me." He reached up, fingers trembling as they brushed her cheek. "I've built empires, Rosalie. I've controlled men and money and every outcome I wanted. But with you, I choose vulnerability. I choose trust. I choose letting you be exactly who you are, even if it means losing you." Rosalie's breath caught. "You're not losing me, not anymore. Then what am I doing? Loving me. The real way. The terrifying way." He kissed her, then soft and desperate, and full of every word they'd never said. And for the first time in either of their lives, surrender didn't feel like defeat. It felt like coming home. 3 days later, Jeffrey took Rosalie to a building in downtown Harbor City she'd never noticed before. Modest, unremarkable, sandwiched between a coffee shop and a bookstore. The kind of place that didn't draw attention. "What is this?" she asked as he unlocked the door. "Something I started building the day you walked away." Inside, the space had been transformed into offices, clean, professional, safe. Desks with computers, file cabinets, a waiting area with comfortable chairs, and on the wall, a simple plaque. "The Rosalie Initiative, Legal Defense for Survivors of Financial Abuse." Her breath stopped. "It's funded by my organization," Jeffrey said quietly, standing behind her, "but staffed entirely by legitimate lawyers, paralegals, advocates. No criminals, no shortcuts. Just people who know how to fight identity theft, financial exploitation, and domestic abuse through the legal system." He paused. "The right way. Your way." Rosalie turned to him, tears streaming down her face. "Jeffrey, you said you didn't want me to solve your problems with crime, so I learned a different way." His voice was rough with emotion. "This won't erase what happened to you, but maybe it'll help the next woman who walks into a diner wearing rags because she has nothing left. Maybe she won't have to hide for a year. Maybe she'll have someone who believes her. You did this." She couldn't finish the sentence. "I did this because you changed me. Not by asking, not by demanding, just by being exactly who you are, and refusing to compromise it." He cupped her face gently. "You didn't try to change me into something softer. You made me want to be something better." Rosalie kissed him through her tears, tasting salt and promise and a future that finally felt possible. 6 months later, the charity gala was everything Rosalie had once feared, power and wealth concentrated in one glittering room, but she walked through it in a midnight blue dress, head high, no longer hiding. Jeffrey watched her from across the room the same way he had that first night, obsessed, reverent, completely undone. She caught his eye and smiled, and he crossed to her like she was the only person who existed. "Dance with me," he said. On the floor, surrounded by his world but no longer consumed by it, Rosalie felt his hand settle at the small of her back. Safe, steady, chosen. He reached up and tucked something into her hair, a single red rose, soft petals against dark curls. "Still obsessed?" she teased. Devastatingly. His eyes held hers. "You're wearing clean clothes now. No more hiding. But I still see the girl in rags who walked into that restaurant and changed everything. And I see the man who learned love doesn't have to be lethal." They swayed together in the golden light. Two broken people who'd found wholeness in refusing to break each other. A mafia king who'd bent his empire without shattering it. A survivor who'd learned that strength could be both fierce and soft. The wolf had finally learned how to love without devouring. And the girl who wore rags had learned she deserved a love that saw her, really saw her, and chose gentleness anyway.